All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar. Hopefully you are seeing my screen with the first slide. For those that don't know me, I am Sandy Mislowitz. I'm the Executive Director of the Capital Region Transportation Council. We are going to be talking today about our current solicitation for transportation planning work. The solicitation has just opened. We're going to walk through, actually, let me do a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. I'll have you mute your mics until the end. I'll take questions at the end. Feel free to use chat at that time or raise your hand if you have a question at the end of the presentation. We'll talk a little bit today about, as a reminder of who we are. We'll talk about our Unified Planning Work Program, through which these funds are being made available and through which we will be assigning projects. All of our planning work goes into the UPWP. We'll talk about the solicitation guidance, the application process, our evaluation criteria, the schedule, and then again, open it up to any questions at the end. So again, as a reminder of who we are, we're the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the 4 counties of the Greater Capital Region. We program federal transportation dollars to plans, projects, and programs that help us implement our regional transportation plan. We are guided by a policy board that is inclusive of the 8 cities, the town of Colony by virtue of its population, a rotating set of town and village members, each of the 4 counties, and then agency representatives, including CDTA, DOT, CDRPC, etc. One of the things, or a couple of the things that we are mandated to do as an MPO is to create a metropolitan transportation plan. You'll also hear us refer to that as a regional transportation plan. That sets our investment policies and principles for an extended time frame. We're looking out to 2050 at this point. That plan is updated every 5 years. We also have a capital program of projects, which serve to implement the plan through transportation, construction projects, rehabilitation of infrastructure, all of the things that go into the infrastructure equation. We're currently in the midst of updating that document. And then the one we're here to talk about today is the Unified Planning Work Program, which is a 1-year program of planning activities. These planning activities may be undertaken by our staff. They may be undertaken by consultants. They may be undertaken by other agencies. We update that annually, and that is the source of the funding that we'll be talking about today. So within the UPWP, the document outlines and describes all the planning work that we fund, again, who undertakes that work, the time frame. So is it a 6-month project, a 1-year project, a multi-year project, estimates the costs of those initiatives, and identifies the funding sources. For this solicitation for planning work, we are making a minimum available right now of $250,000. And why I'm saying minimum is because we do have a backlog of linkage studies. Those of you who are familiar with our linkage program, we currently have 7 or 8 active linkage studies that are at various states of completion. If more of those get completed between now and the end of our fiscal year, the fiscal year for the purposes of this runs from April 1st to March 31st. So if by the end of March we get more completed, we may have more resources for additional activities. We'll wait and see, but we can estimate at this point a minimum of $250,000 for planning funds. Everything I'm going to talk about today is available on our website. The link is provided here. And I encourage you to look at the UPWP section of our website if you have not already done so. In terms of the eligible applicants for the programs, right now we are opening this up to all of our local governments, so towns, cities, villages, our counties, member organizations like CDTA and state DOT, We can have co-applicants. So let's say you have a neighborhood association interested in looking at an issue. So long as there's a letter from the lead applicant or the city or the town or the village that the neighborhood association is in, the lead applicant can be that sponsor. So making sure that that connection is made through that municipal support for whatever a nonprofit group or others are interested in doing. And we encourage intermunicipal projects as often as we can, because as we know, many of these issues don't mind and don't pay attention to the borders that we all live with. So, intermunicipal cooperation is always encouraged. In terms of the activities we're going to be steering folks toward this year, the first set of, there's really two key program areas, the linkage program and our ADA program. So I'll start with the linkage program. We fund a number of strategic community-based transportation and land use plans through our linkage program. The plans are to be consistent with our long-range transportation plan, which, as many of you know, is New Visions 2050. Some examples of these types of studies include complete streets plans, neighborhood and area, sub-area transportation plans, corridor studies, and concept plans. Maybe you're looking at a congested corridor, maybe you're looking at an area for alternative transportation. We also fund zoning and land use regulation studies to help update and change land use regulations where needed. Active transportation plans can be a broad range of things, including trail feasibility studies, bicycle and pedestrian master plans, this sort of planning work. All of the linkage program planning work is undertaken by consultants and do require a robust public involvement process. They also require a 10% cash match from the sponsoring entity. We have capped the dollar value of the total project costs at $150,000. We're not allowing in-kind this year due to changes in how we have to report our funding for reimbursement. So cash match is going to be the requirement for the linkage program. We do have a map, which I'm showing on the slide, of the locations of existing linkage studies. If you're interested in learning more about what's been funded to date, the types of work we fund in this program, and you may not be familiar with plans that are already have been undertaken in your community. The second bucket, if you will, is the ADA self-evaluations and transition plans. We have typically issued a separate solicitation for these activities. We combined that this year into this solicitation for efficiency reasons. What we can do in this program is help communities collect data on the condition of their sidewalks, their curb ramps, street crossings, a whole range of things related to pedestrian activity in the public right-of-way. In addition, we can look at paved multi-use paths for ADA. And then we can also help communities develop basically their transition plan, which can include the policy statement, identifying the coordinator, developing the complaint or the grievance process. We funded a number of these, most recently in the city of Rensselaer, town of Clifton Park, and the village of Menands. These two will require a 10% cash match, and we're capping the requests at $150,000. These are scalable, obviously, to the amount of mileage of the sidewalk network and other infrastructure in the community. And I'll talk about that in a future slide. So in terms of the application process, we use a JotForm electronic application. We no longer accept paper applications. We are going to have a different form for the linkage program versus the ADA projects, simply because we need some different information because of the different types of projects. What these two applications do have in common, obviously we ask for basic applicant information, who the contact person is, basic information like that. We'll ask for a project description for both, again, the proposed budget, so that total project cost, will be broken down on the applications by 90% being federally funded and 10% being the local cash match share. Specific to the ADA plans, we wanted to just give an estimate in terms of how we develop a cost estimate for that. And I think a safe assumption based on our history here is assume $550 per sidewalk mile if you are seeking an ADA transition plan and some data collection. Hopefully that will be a good guide to come up with that cost estimate. The other thing that both applications will require is a letter of commitment from the lead elected official or other high-ranking official in your community that demonstrates the support of the project by the community, as well as committing to the local cash match requirement. Now I'm going to walk through the differences between the two applications so folks are aware of what's to be expected at the point of application. So for our linkage program proposals, again, you're going to have to describe how the proposal relates to our New Visions 2050 planning principles. There's links in the application and in our guidance documents to those principles, so you can learn more about those online. We also require a rough study area maps to give us a sense of the geographic location you're seeking to study. We ask that you think about environmental justice. We have some links to a map that shows where our environmental justice populations are in the region. And you may want to just indicate and make some notes about that in your application about the relationship of the study to those areas if it applies. If you are going to be providing some staff in-kind services in addition to the local cash match, you are welcome to note that in the application. If you are seeking to study a roadway or some piece of infrastructure that you are not the roadway owner or the facility owner, so for example, let's say you want to do a corridor study on a state-owned route, what we ask is that you reach out to the state DOT to get a letter of commitment from the roadway owner, which acknowledges A, that they know that you're applying for these funds, and B, that they're willing to work with you on the study should it be funded. In addition to that, we also look at the relationship of the proposed project to prior planning work. Is this project helping to implement an older linkage study? Maybe it's taking another planning study further than it already has been done. So that is also indicated in the application process. We are going to be evaluating the two types of projects differently. So specific to the linkage program projects, these actually remain unchanged really from last year, but we'll examine how the project advances our regional planning principles and how it relates to federal planning factors. We'll look at whether the study area is in an environmental justice census tract. Is there an intermunicipal partnership involved? The commitment to the project, which can be demonstrated in numerous ways. Maybe you've passed a resolution locally for the proposal. Maybe you're going to offer more cash match than the 10% minimum required. Maybe you already have identified some implementation funds, which can take the plan to reality much faster. So those are the sorts of things we'd be looking for there. Again, are we implementing a previously completed transportation council plan or other type of regional plan? Has the sponsor demonstrated the ability to support the project through staff, appointed officials, or volunteers? So that's where the in-kind is helpful. We know some municipalities don't have a lot of staff resources, but maybe there's some volunteers that can help with that. And it's helpful to know who those folks are at the point of application. And then finally, is this an innovative proposal or demonstrates some new planning technique that might be used in our region? So those are the evaluation criteria for the linkage program. And we score that out of 25 total points. Now switching gears to the ADA self-evaluation and transition plans. We'll have, again, a specific application form for these projects. In addition to the information that's required for both, for these ADA related applications, we ask that if the community already has some ADA related documentation, maybe you have an older transition plan, or maybe you have some older data that was collected, whatever those pieces of information are, please upload them with your submission. We'll also ask that you provide whatever data you have in terms of sidewalk mileage or trail mileage. If you have a map, that's also acceptable, but something that gives us a sense of the scale of the work that would be involved on the data collection side. We also request that you list groups and or individuals that will be included in the public involvement process for ADA plans. And what we're looking for here is, are you connecting this process to the folks with disabilities or people in the community who have a particular interest in these initiatives? And we ask that you identify those folks at the point of application. Similarly, as to the linkage studies, if you are providing additional staff support through in-kind services, we ask that you know who those individuals are in the application. Are there any maintenance agreements that we should be aware of? We ask you to either describe them, and if you have documents, to upload them at the point of application. And then we also ask you to describe your geographic information system or GIS capabilities. Some communities have in-house GIS services, so we can collect data, put it in a shapefile, and give it to you for your use. Other communities don't have access to GIS or may not have staff capabilities to use GIS. So we just ask you to describe where you're at the point of an application, because that can impact how we manage the data moving forward. For the evaluation piece on the ADA self-evaluation and transition plans, we score these out of 100 points. And the things we consider is the reach and reasonableness of the public outreach list provided in the application. We also look at the amount of match in relation to municipal sidewalk miles. So, we just kind of gauge the scale of the data collection. The percent of municipal population that are people of color or have low incomes. That gets to the equity and the environmental justice question. We look for the folks that were identified from the staff side, so participants who would be participating in the kickoff meeting. We'll also consider geographic balance throughout all of the applicants for this type of work, and an overall rating of application and supporting materials as determined by the evaluation team. So those, again, total to 100 points, and those are the items we'll be looking for in the evaluation process. And now some key dates. Obviously, today we are doing the sponsor workshop. We are recording this, and we'll make this video available to folks post and anyone who was unable to attend today. We'll be asking for the applications, the due date on December 6th. The month of December, our staff will be evaluating and prioritizing the proposals. We anticipate at our January 8th Planning Committee meeting here at the Transportation Council that we'll be sharing our staff recommendations for action. Those staff recommendations will be incorporated into the 2025-2026 Unified Planning Work Program at our January 29th meeting, at which point we will be making that whole document available for public review with presumed adoption at our March 6th Policy Board meeting. And as a reminder, the funds that are available through this solicitation cannot be used before April 1st of 2025. And even with that, bear in mind, there's some lead up that needs to happen to procure consultants. So best case scenario, if all the stars align, fall of 2025 is usually a time frame at which you might be able to hold a kickoff meeting for these types of planning, this type of planning work. Now, just some general administration information, just as a reminder for applicants. We do execute a memorandum of understanding with all the sponsors. We expect those to be executed by the end of September in 2025. Within 6 months of the date of the fully executed MOU, we expect the consultant to be selected. There's a whole process for that that I won't get into today. We also expect within 2 months of that date consultant selection, or consultant contract execution, I should say, that we hold a study kickoff meeting, and then the study should be completed within 18 months of consultant contract execution. Those are pretty generous timeframes. We know, there's been a lot of staff changes at both our MPO and at the local and state levels that have slowed some of the current ones down. We hope that things are going to start leveling off so that these can move forward more expeditiously than they have in the past. But these are some basic milestones to keep in mind. And just a final couple of points on the administrative side. We administer all of the consultant contracts on your behalf. We take that burden on as we know how challenging it is to manage consultants and deal with all of the issues related to that. If a consultant is used to prepare your application material, they are not eligible to apply for the planning study contract. So just keep that in mind. If you are planning on using a consultant to prepare your application, they're not eligible to apply for the contract. Also, as a reminder, consultants on retainer to a municipality are in no way guaranteed a contract. So if you're submitting something and you're thinking, oh, my consultant on retainer we're just going to use them. This is a competitive solicitation process for consultants. So there's no guarantee that they will be awarded the contract. All the sponsors will be invoiced for their cash match contributions no later than the end of 2025, so December 1st. So we do ask that you have in your municipal budgets for the 2025 calendar year, whatever timeframe your municipality uses for your budgeting process, that those funds are in your 2025 budgets. And then finally, the federal funds are all capped. So project awards are capped at whatever the dollar value we awarded them. And so with that, I will open up the floor to any questions. For many of you, this probably sounds very familiar, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions you may have at this time. I am hearing none and seeing none. If there are no questions, and I will leave you with this slide. We do have one chat. So let's see. Thank you. Thank you, Jen. If you have any additional questions about the solicitation, feel free to email us at info@capitalmpo.org. As always, I encourage you to sign up for our e-newsletter, follow us on social media, and then all the materials are available on our website. So if there's no other comments, thoughts, questions, then I will close today's session. Thank you very much for participating today, and we'll talk with you soon. Have a good day.